Ciao everybody, the day is finally here for the Pegasus by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. The vote was overwhelming for the Pegasus over the other races that we were considering, so we are sitting here enjoying a nice cup of Sure Bet coffee. It is a great tool to sharpen your handicapping skills, and you can get some on PassTheWire.com through a link to Sure Bet Coffee, or you could go direct to SureBetCoffee.com and get some for yourself. Now, why show this other stuff? Breeders' Cup, Whitney Day. I don't know. We're going to do the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns on the Pegasus, but it kind of helps me get in the mood, helps me get the blood flowing, get psyched up for it. So we're going to reminisce a little bit. And remember, there's really only one benchmark when it comes to whether you're a lion or a mortal when it comes to playing this game. Do you beat the game is the only benchmark. Second to that is, do you beat the game to the point where you can make a good living and live well just from the game? If you can answer yes, then you're doing all right and you're in the right place because you're in good company. Now, again, why show all this stuff? After all you have seen, that's your question. We'll be back with the Pegasus by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns in a minute.
White Barrio, interesting as as anybody in the race. Third time Rick Dutrow. First time in the Met Mile that he run this horse. Had a horrible trip. Still runs a 0.5 negative number. Comes back. Those of you that watch the show know I loved him in the Whitney. I think he was 10-1, a ridiculous Christmas gift of a price.
The top of the stretch in the Whitney, and White Barrio is the leader narrowly over Giant Game.
We think that he should improve off of his last race, and if he gets a clean trip, we're expecting him to run big.
Look at White Barrio and a Rad Ortiz Jr. in a runaway. White Barrio wins by almost 6
And with the short field, Mark and Rick talked and we decided, hey, let's take a shot here. We thought he would run well, but we didn't know he was going to run that well, John.
Runs a 6 negative, by far faster than anybody in the race. He run a race. I'm not going to compare it to the Flightline Pacific Classic, which was just off the charts, but he ran by far the best race of any horse this year to date that has run, by far.
So I'm a big believer in when they run that kind of big race off the top, you got to give them some time off, freshen them up, let them recover from the number, which when Rick and I discussed it, we thought it was best to send him out here middle of September and prepare him over here over the track surface at Santa Anita. It can be a little difficult. So he's going to have 5 or 6 breezes over this surface. He's settled in really nice.
Rick Dutrow packed his suitcase, head out west, got to Santa Anita early with this horse. Didn't even consider a prep off the Whitney. He was the one that kind of set the tone this year for coming in fresh. A lot of people kind of followed his lead because the Whitney was before any of those other races. After the Whitney, he said, I'm going right to the Classic. Packed up his game, head out west, and he's been there since with White Barrio.
We'll probably have to use him a little more earlier than we want to get in a tactical position behind the speed, and we'd like to be in the first horse and the second flight of horses, stalking those horses to be able to get first run at the quarter pole.
Bottom line is this, he's had enough time to recover from that. Is he going to regress? He can regress and win. He can regress 2, 3, 4 points and still win the race off that. If he runs anything back close to that, the race is for second. It's as simple as that.
But it is White Barrio and a Rad Ortiz, and they have won the Breeders' Cup Classic.
I think people deserve a second chance in life, right? And I don't think anyone in the industry questions Rick as a horseman at all. I mean, you know, I've talked to a few people, and they've all said he's probably one of the better horsemen that they know. So we definitely made the right decision, you know, and we're excited for Rick to be back, you know, in the Classic and have an opportunity.
It's exciting. You know, Rick's only been back a few months. I don't know if, you know, 3 months ago he expected to have this kind of horse this fast, but, you know, he's game for anything. He's definitely somebody that, you know, doesn't turn down too much, especially when it comes to being around a nice horse. So, you know, we're very fortunate that we've been able to, you know, be around him this long, and, you know, that we've been able to keep him going in the right direction. And, you know, hopefully after this, you know, we get to prepare for, you know, the next big one.
Very interesting in Detroit, in my opinion. This is a horse that always showed a lot of potential. Exploded second time out, win by 4.
Here comes Cogburn, and Cogburn has his sights on Nobles in the final 16th of a mile.
There's a lot of turf in his pedigree, top and bottom.
It will be Cogburn on the outside, getting to the front.
The other thing that I like about Cogburn a lot is when I look at his Thorograph numbers. He's got some fast races. He's got a 1.
And Cogburn under Ricardo Santana Jr. wins the Troy.
I love in these 3-year-old races. Again, those of you that watch the show and have been reading, you know, my columns and a lot of my handicapper things over the years know I like up and comers. I like betting horses to do things that, you know, maybe we can anticipate that some others can't, and that's how you sometimes beat a lot of favorites. I like program trading.
And program trading, resilient coming back on the inside. Program trading would not be denied.
White Barrio is very interesting to me for a couple of reasons. We heard from Blake, we know what the bond thinks, okay? Second time Rick Dutrow. This time gets the jump from the catbird seat and turn it for home. White Barrio was going to be in the race, if not on the lead, in the race, and the one they got to go get.
They're at the top of the stretch in the Whitney, and White Barrio is the leader narrowly over Giant Game.
We've had Irad breezing him a bunch at Belmont before he came up here. I know Irad really likes him. You know, we think that he should improve off of his last race. And, you know, if he gets a clean trip, we're expecting him to run big.
Look at White Barrio and Arad Ortiz Jr. in a runaway. White Barrio wins by almost 6 lengths.
The most intriguing horse to me of the patterns and the numbers on Thorograph. 2-year-old, starting at Delmar, 6.1, 4.2, 2.3. So he showed at 2 that he was fast, okay? Comes back, Santa Anita runs a 4, even 4, vet scratches, comes back, runs a 4 again, moves back into Bob Baffert's barn, and Baffert ain't sending him there, Jimmy Bond's there, or if Bob's going himself. None of them are going for crab cakes. We know that. If they're going because they think they got a shot. This horse has a 2.3 as a 2-year-old. I tend to think off the paired 4s, he's going to go forward. He's going to go past his best 2-year-old number, which puts him faster than a 2.3, which puts him square in the mix. Now, getting away from the numbers for a bit, he has been a little bit of a disappointment. You know, he didn't go, we talked about on the original Derby show, and again on the Oak show, that we like 2-year-olds that are good horses and nice horses of this caliber when they make their first start at 3 to go past their number. He didn't do that, but he's got those 2 4s. He's got the vet scratch that shows. So maybe there was a little issue. You know, if they're sending him to Baltimore for the Preakness, I'm sure that whatever issue there may have been is gone, if there was one. So dangerous.
Hi, this is Dan Cronin with Fat Bald Guy Racing. We've got a great package this week for the Pegasus Stakes, only $39. You get the entire week. You get Gulfstream. You get every other track we do also. It's a great package, great value. Hope to see you.
Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pegasus by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns on Past the Wire TV. I'm excited to do the show. I hope that you are all excited to be here, excited about the Pegasus, and excited at looking at the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. Remember, the numbers and the patterns don't lie. They are what they are. So we're a few days out, but they've already drawn the race. So we know the post positions. We know who's in, who's not. The weather looks like it's going to be beautiful. So that's a non-factor. So we're pretty much ready to go. We got the Thorographs, and we're ready to attack the Pegasus and see, what the numbers and the patterns tell us. And, those of you that have been watching these shows, which I think we started for the Triple Crown last year with the Kentucky Oaks. We came up with a lot of winners. Standout in the Breeders' Cup Classic, Derby winner, Oaks winner, just really killed it. Killed it, Whitney Day. Just really had a lot of luck with the numbers and patterns. Now, we all have the same information, but everybody reads things differently. So to me, it's all in interpreting and reading the patterns, not necessarily the number. If it was as easy as finding the horse with the fastest race or who's run the fastest race and just thinking he's the fastest horse, he's going to win or she's going to win, we wouldn't be even be doing this. We'd be sitting on an island somewhere, sipping pina coladas with our toes in the sand, not worrying about nothing, and maybe wagering over the iPad on the beach. But it's not that easy. There's a lot that goes into it, and reading and interpreting these patterns is vital. So with that, we'll get right into the Pegasus, a mile and an eighth at Gulfstream Park. And I will tell you something that was told to me by legendary trainer Bob Baffert when we were talking about one of his horses in the Pegasus back a couple of years ago. He said something about Gulfstream Park that I thought was interesting, and I never forgot. He said that Gulfstream Park is a racetrack where horses that might not necessarily get a mile and an eighth or a mile and a quarter can get it over that track. So if you got a good miler or a good 7 furlong horse, or a horse that maybe is at their limit at a mile and a 16th, they'll get a mile and an eighth at Gulfstream Park. It's just that kind of racetrack. And that does come into play a little bit in this race, and we'll get to that. Now, remember, we're not handicapping the race. We're not deep diving the race. We're going over the Thorograph numbers and patterns on each horse to see who looks like they're moving forward, who's fast enough to win, who's sitting on a potential top, who's likely to regress, and who's just too slow. So that's basically what we're looking for in this. We're not deep diving and dissecting the race and necessarily coming up with a horse. We may come up with a horse. We may come up with a standout like in the Classic with White Barrio, but we may not. So
let's start with the rail Nimitz class and take a look at this horse. George Weaver, Sharp Barn, started as a 2-year-old, 19 and a half, nothing to write home about. Comes back as a 3-year-old, 12 and a half, 18 and a half, jumps forward 7 and a quarter, 7 and a quarter, 7 and a quarter, 3 steady races. Now, one of the things we've said that we look for, or that I look for, is steady numbers, no big forward jumps, steady or the same number 2-3 times in a row, signal a forward move. So what do? We got 7 and a quarter, 7 and a quarter, 7 and a quarter, bang, jumps forward to 2 and a half. Regresses off the 2 and a half. Very, very predictable Thorograph cycle. 17 goes back to a 7, 3 and a half, 3 and a half to close out his 3-year-old year. Gets faster at 4, 2 3/4, 2 and a half, 2 and a half, 2 and a half, 0 and a half at Monmouth. That's his, well, tied really for his fastest race. And 1 1/4 negative. That's his. No, that's not even his fastest race. 1 1/4 negative, then a 0, then 2 and a half negative. That's his fastest race at Parks, and then he regressed off that to a 4 3/4. So, pattern of his last races would indicate that he is at his best. 2 negative is fast enough to win. So he is fast enough at his best to win. But the pattern, what does it say? 0 at Monmouth, improves a little bit. 1 1/4 negative, 0, staying fast. That 2 and a half negative number seems to have knocked him out a little bit. Now he goes to a 4 3/4, coming back relatively quick. I don't like the pattern. It doesn't scream to me go forward. Now he may bounce back a little bit from that 4 3/4, but it does look like that 2 and a half negative number knocked him out a little bit. He would have to go back to that or close to it to win. And I don't see him going from a 4 3/4 back to a number fast enough to win. So he's got a pattern that, indicates he may move forward a little bit, but enough to, put him in this race. I don't know. I don't think so. So he's a nay for me on the pattern. Now, mind you, these races in comparison with the 3-year-old races that we were doing last year, you're going to have a lot more horses with more races and more consistent numbers. So things are not going to jump out at us as much as they did in those 3-year-old races, where you're dealing with a much more limited amount of data, and it's easier under those circumstances. Although it seems like it might be harder, it's actually easier to decipher some patterns and have some things jump out at you. Here, you're going to have a lot of horses that are close number-wise, which, can make it challenging and give us a little bit more work to do, but that's okay. That's why we're here. The stuff is good. What do you want me to tell you? O'Connor, Safi Joseph. This horse had a lot of starts in South America before he came here. So we're going to focus on when he came here, because everything changes. His first race here was a 0 and a half, which was a fast race as a 5-year-old. As a 6-year-old, he regressed off that in the first start back, runs a 9, then runs a 1 and a half, then a 9, then a 1 and a half, then a 4, then a 1 and a half. We kind of see that up and down Z pattern that we talked about. Good race, bad race, good race, bad race, good race, bad race. Those patterns tend to be pretty consistent in repeating themselves. So 9, 1 and a half, 9, 1 and a half, 4 1/4, 1 and a half, running back relatively quick, not super quick, but relatively quick. But I don't like the pattern. He's on that Z pattern and he's towards a negative race. So no likey on the pattern. O'Connor. Dynamic 1, Todd Pletcher. Always got to say he's dangerous at Gulfstream Park. First start as a, no, I'm sorry. First start as a 6-year-old. Wow, this horse, I didn't think this horse has been around that long. Okay. 3-year-old.
8 3/4, 5, 2, 14 and a half. That I think was the Derby. 2, 9 3/4. Comes back as a 4-year-old. 3.5, 2, 2, 1 1/4, 3 3/4. One start at 5 late in the year, 7 1/4. Now comes back off the 7 1/4. Has a pattern that says he'll probably go forward, probably needed the last race. Definitely can get back to some of his faster numbers, but his faster numbers are not fast enough to win. So while he's got a forward moving pattern, he would have to run a brand new top in order to win. I don't see anything on the Thorograph that screams that to me, although I do see a horse that can move forward. Seeing him go from a 7 1/4 to, maybe a 0 or 1 or 2 negative, which is probably what it's going to take to win this race. Definitely a 1. I don't know. Not seeing it. Not a believer. Hoist the Gold. That's the sprinter that's stretching out that a lot of people are going to dismiss because he's a sprinter. But I'm going to remember what Bob said, that Gulfstream Park is a racetrack, and there are a couple of others, but Gulfstream is one of those tracks where a 7/8 or a miler or a 1.16 horse can get a 1.125. So I'm not going to downgrade Hoist the Gold as a sprinter as much as some other people might. But let's see what his pattern says. We'll start way back. 2-year-old, 13.5, 11, 6.5, 21.5, 11, 15 3/4. 3-year-old, vet scratch at the fairgrounds, 6, 8.5, 16, 5, 11.5, 5, 5. Those consistent numbers. 5, 5, 2 3/4, 3, 2.5. So again, those consistent numbers show us that forward move is coming. As a 4-year-old, that's when he started to get really fast. 8 1/4, jumps up to a 1 1/4, repeats to 1 1/4, regresses to a 6.5, goes forward 3, 5 1/4, 6.5, runs his best ever to that point. 0 3/4 negative, regresses to a 1, then runs a 4 1/4 negative number. That's his fastest race ever. That was last time at Aqueduct when he ran off the screen. Last time he ran a top, he regressed. Now he runs an even faster top and monster race. I'm gonna say he's gonna regress. Now, 4 1/4 negative number. He can regress 2 or 3 points to a 1 negative, and that still puts him in the race if he can get the distance. So he's a horse that can regress and win. But he's not a standout at that number, and he's got to get that longer distance, which I believe at Gulfstream he might get. But I don't want to take a horse. I don't like to take a horse I know is sitting on a regression, unless there's just no other way to go, and it looks like he's going to regress and win. He can regress and win, but it doesn't look like he's going to regress and win, if that makes sense. If not, we can discuss it further in the comments. But that's kind of how I see it. Trademark, going back to his 2-year-old year, and he's been around a while, a lot of races. 20 1/4, 9 1/4, 7 1/4, 8 1/4. 3-year-old, 21.5, 7, 7, 12, 8.5, 8 1/4, 10. Then he finally gets fast, 2 1/4, 3. As a 4-year-old, got a little faster, 6.5, 4 3/4, 9 1/4, 2 1/4. Bang, runs a 0 at Indiana. Bang, runs a 0 3/4 at Monmouth. Repeats that again at Churchill, 0 3/4. Regresses off those 3 fast races at Keeneland to 8.5. Bounces back 0 3/4. He's kind of an in and outer. He has been consistent at times, but more often than not, he's good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. His fastest race makes him competitive, but it looks to me like he's probably sitting on a regression when I see the 0 3/4, 5.5, 0 3/4.
Then we see what he does Saturday. Looks to me like he's going to regress. Don't want that. Senior Buscador. He's a pretty consistent racehorse, this Senior Buscador. He's like kind of a cut below the upper echelon ones, but on the numbers he holds his own, and he's a consistent animal. And we've always got to respect that. So let's look at Senior Buscador, who likes to come from well out of it, which is not ideal at Gulfstream. 6.5 as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old, 2 3/4, 5, 2 3/4, 0, 5 1/4. 5-year-old. Kind of showed he's a big boy. 2 3/4 at Sunland Park, goes to Oaklawn, 0, Santa Anita, 2 3/4, 0 at Del Mar, 0 at Del Mar, 0 3/4 at Santa Anita, 0 at Santa Anita again. Aqueduct, 2 1/4 negative, really fast race. So, Senior Buscador, what are you going to do? Are you going to get faster at 6? Are you going to get better at 6? You really stepped up your game at 5, and you showed a good deal of consistency. So I'm going to say Senior Buscador's got a pattern that shows he's fast enough to be competitive. If he runs back to the new top, he's right in the thick of it. But I would lean more towards regressing a little bit off the new top and going back to that 0, which makes him a contender, but no standout. And again, I don't want to bet a horse on the on what I look at as a regressing pattern, unless that regression just screams he's going to win anyway, and it doesn't matter. Like with White Barrio as an example in the Breeders' Cup Classic, he can regress off his Whitney 5 points and still win. The race was for second. So unless we have that kind of situation, I'm going to look another way. National Treasure, the favorite, a horse we talked about on the Triple Crown Trail and has been on some of our previous Thorograph shows. And those of you that remember will know that this is a horse I always felt was sitting on a monster race. Never really delivered it. And even when he ran huge in the Breeders' Cup Mile, on the numbers, he still hasn't run that monster race. Are we going to see it on Saturday? Let's see what the numbers tell us. 2-year-old, 6 1/4, 4 1/2, 2 3/4 in the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland as a 2-year-old. As a 3-year-old, 4, first time out. Vet scratch at Santa Anita, comes back with a 4, comes back with another 4, comes back with a 4 1/2. The Preakness that he won was a 4, was not a great number, and still never really delivered. Had that pattern of the consistent numbers, but never showed that forward race. Lays off a little bit after the Belmont, comes back at Saratoga with a 5. Not that great, but it really improves off of that. Runs a 2, and then runs his best race to date in the Breeders' Cup, where he gave Cody's Wish all that he could handle. Runs a 0 1/2 negative number. That race puts him right square in the middle of this. What I like about it is after the break from the Belmont, we've got a 5, a 2, a 0 1/2 negative number. We've got 3 improving numbers, good spacing, and now a nice break after the Breeders' Cup to come back as his first race at 4. Theoretically, he could have gotten faster. He's got a pattern that to me says, finally, we're going to see that best race that National Treasure has to offer. So I think he's going to go forward off the 0 1/2 negative. And I think we're going to see that big race that I've felt that he's had in him for a long time. So I say he's probably going to run a 1 negative, maybe even a 2 negative, which is going to make him a handful if I'm right in reading his pattern and thinking that he's sitting on another forward move. First Mission, highly regarded horse. It's going to have to get faster to win, though. That's for sure. Didn't run a 2 at 3. We got a 2 1/2, 4, 3 1/4,
6.5, 2.5. After the Keeneland race in April, missed the Triple Crown, came back in October at Keeneland. That's when he run the 6.5 and then the 2.5. Now he goes to Gulfstream, first time 4-year-old. He's got a forward moving pattern, but he's really going to have to move forward in order to be a competitor. But he does have a pattern, 6.5, 2.5. He could go 3 points forward and run a 0, 0 negative, 1 negative, and that puts him square in the mix. So he's got a forward moving pattern. He's lightly raced. He's Brad Cox. He's dangerous. Grand Aspen. Go back to his 3-year-old year when he first started. We got 15.5, 23. Ellis Park, 12.25, 11.5, 6 3/4, 6.5, 2.5, 2.25. Now he goes to his first race at 5. I don't see. Well, I do see a forward moving pattern. Okay, 6 3/4, 6.5. Those two steady numbers that we love. What does he do? He comes back and he goes forward 2.5, 2.25. So there, he went forward. Now we've got two paired forward moving races. It's going to go forward. Is he this good? It's Todd Pletcher, always dangerous. I would say live long shot, forward moving pattern. Lightly raced, can definitely get a fast enough race out of this horse to possibly make some noise in this race. Brings us to Il Miracolo. Il Miracolo, a lot of starts. Ran an awful lot as a 3-year-old. Wasn't that fast at 2, 16, 15.5, 13, 11.5, 16. At 3, 12 and 3/4, 14.5, 12.5, 11.5, 7.5, 8.5, 3, 0, 1.5, 0, 3. Now Gulfstream. He's another one that's got that Z. Good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. But what's different about him and the other ones that have come up with that similar type of pattern is he's sitting on a forward race. So he may run a competitive number here. Good enough to win? It's possible. He's definitely got a forward moving pattern if he stays consistent to what he's been doing really the past 6-7 months. So I see no reason to think that's going to change. Moving right along, we've got Krupi. Krupi's a horse that I originally thought was going to be a runner. I remember, I think it was at, I want to say Saratoga, where he got left at the gate first time out and came flying. Wasn't a fast race, run 11.25, 11.25, 12, 9. Never really turned out that fast. 3.25, 8.25, 12 3/4, 8, 3.25, 6, 6, and now he goes to go. Oh no, I'm sorry, 6, 6, 3. Last time he got up to run that 3. So we saw that forward move. We saw the consistent 6, 6 that we've talked about and has proven itself all over the Pegasus. 6, 6, bang, jumps forward to that 3. Runs back relatively quick off that 3. Is he going to repeat it or go forward off it? I tend to think not, based on his past numbers. Looks like a kind of horse that, when he run a top first time out as a 3-year-old, he run a 3.25. He regressed to an 8.25. Took him a while to get back to that 3 in Saratoga. He run a 3.25, regressed to a 6. Run those 2 6s back to back, and then run another 3. I got to say he's sitting on a pattern that looks like he's going to regress. Skippy Longstocking, another one that's been knocking around for a while. Another one from Safi Joseph, 2-year-old, 21, 12, 7.5, 15.25, 7.5. 3-year-old, 13, 7.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Again, steady, forward move. 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 0.5. But he goes forward off that 1 negative. Then he regresses. He goes from that 1 negative to a 6. Comes back as a 4-year-old. 2, 0, 2, 0.5, 1 negative, gets back to that 1 negative, regresses a little bit to a 0. Now, first time as a 5-year-old. So if we look at those last races, and they're spaced pretty good, we've got that 0.5, the 1 negative, 0. Starting to see a little bit of a Z. If we go back before that, 2, 0, 2, 0.5, 1 negative, 0. Looks like he's sitting on a forward race here. So with that in mind, let's say that Skippy Longstocking is going to go forward, and his numbers are fast enough to be competitive. Castle Chaos. Castle Chaos, we've got 2 starts at 3, 8.5, 6 3/4, 6 3/4, 5, 30.5, 24.25 as a 4-year-old. Kind of went south, comes back as a 5-year-old, 5, 10.25, 5, 7.5. And then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Something happened. 0.25, 1. Now where's he going to go? First time as a 6-year-old. Looks to me like he's turned a corner, and he's going to run another, another race close to what he's done in the past. So, I see him around the 0-1 range, which if, nobody runs really big, I tend to think someone's going to run bigger than that. But if no one runs really big, he's a contender. So we've got a bunch of horses that have forward moving patterns, some consistent, some regressing. But who jumps out as the ones that really look like they're going to go forward and be really competitive? And I would have to say that First Mission looks like he's got that potential, but you're taking on to come as to what he might do. National Treasure definitely, to me, looks like he's finally going to deliver that big race that I've thought was in him for a while. Senior Buscador, competitor, forward move. There's some others like we spoke about that have, forward moves in them. Nemitz Class, O'Connor, no. Dynamic One, yes, but not fast enough. Hoist of Gold. We talked about him regressing and still being able to be competitive, but other factors as well. Trademark we talked about. So, that's pretty much how the Pegasus shapes up. So what you do is you look at the horses, you look at what they're going to run, what you think they're going to run. Any questions, put them in the comments. And then you kind of look at the pace, and you handicap the race as well. It's not just a numbers game. The numbers are a part of it and tell us, who's moving in which direction. But it's not strictly a numbers game. So we've got to handicap the race too. But at least now we know who's fast enough to win, who's likely to go forward. And again, if I had a bet, I would say, and I don't have to bet, but I'm gonna. But I think National Treasure is going to go past that 0.5 negative number, and that's going to make him pretty tough to beat. Senior Buscador, he's definitely got the numbers. First Mission, like we said, he's on the come. Grand Aspen, he's another one that's on the come. So there you have the Pegasus by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. On Pegasus Day, Past the Wire TV will be on the scene. We're going to do something that we really have never done. We're going to have our normal on-the-scene stuff where we've got some interviews and we talk to some people and we get some behind-the-scenes stuff for everybody. But we're also going to be giving previews of the races.
some selections of the races before the races on Past the Wire TV Live, so you can check that out. Just click on Past the Wire TV Live on Pegasus Day. The videos will stay up there afterwards, so if you miss it live, you'll still be able to watch the replay and see who we like in a bunch of the races on that super card that they have on Pegasus Saturday at Gulfstream. I do like the 2 turf races an awful lot that lead into the Pegasus. So we'll see if we can structure some tickets and make some nice hits along the way. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Now, we're going to do more Thorograph races this year. If there's any race you really want me to try and work in that's on the schedule coming up, put it in the comments. Let me know. Any questions, put it in the comments. Let me know. We'll get them answered. We don't leave anybody hanging. At least we try not to. But definitely let me know the races that you want us to try and get on the schedule for the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. Yes, we're definitely going to do the Kentucky Derby again. How can we not? I'll try and do the Oaks too. But we'll definitely do the Derby, do some other races. But the ones you want, any of the Derby preps specifically, let me know, because if you don't let me know, I don't know. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for watching the show, and we'll see you later this week at Gulfstream Park in beautiful sunny Hallandale Beach, Florida, for the Pegasus.
Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING. Get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator exclusively on DRF Bets.
Tracking trips with Pick 6 King John Stettin. It's one of the best tools in horse racing for any level of player. It's your second set of eyes, spotting troubled trips, betting angles, track trends, horses to watch and favorites to fade, 10 figs, ticket structure, and more. At Tracking Trips, you're a friend with benefits. Not a member? You must hate winning money. Join Tracking Trips now. Visit pastthewire.com and we'll see you in the winner's circle. Remember, nobody does it better.
Number 1 is Mo Donegal by Uncle Mo. And they're off in the Remsen. As they come on for the finish, and it's going to be tight here in the Remsen. Mo Donegal. Mo Donegal bearing down on the outside. It's Mo Donegal and early voting, and it is Mo Donegal to win the Wood Memorial. And it will be Mo Donegal to win the Test of the Champion, the Belmont Stakes.
Does it better.